Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. I'm Brian Doyle, and with me, as always, are my two co-hosts, Tim McNeil and Rob Rogers. Good afternoon, guys. How you doing today?
Well, how you fellas doing today?
No complaints, man. No complaints. I just got back from a little golf trip, so, it's nice to come back from being a bum and then come on and do some podcasting,
There you go.
Stay away from that actual work as long as I can.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
But anyway, nobody cares about me and my vacation. Everybody's here for a much more specific reason. And with that being said, I'd love to welcome our special guest today, Allan Jocson from over at Agilitec. I've gotten to know Allan over the last year, and I'm excited to have him come on the podcast and learn a little bit more about himself, his company, and how they're differentiating themselves in the marketplace. So, Allan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Good to have you on.
So we love to kick things off with learning a little bit about you and the journey. How exactly did you end up, at Agilitec, and what is the backstory that led you into this lovely industry we called MSP?
Let's see if I can remember that far back. I've been in the IT industry since 1993 professionally, right? So quite a bit. I'm coming up on 30 years almost, right, in the industry. So it's crazy to think about that, but started in IT consulting in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, during the .com boom, right? So this is 93. Worked for Netscape, Listen.com, several others, primarily as an independent consultant, working with other consultants, setting up networks, almost like MSP work, if you will, right? And then fast forward .com crash, right? Subsequent crash, everybody out of work, right, in the Bay Area. So we decided to go, hey, let's move to somewhere else. Las Vegas looks good, So it was just I think just a temporary solution at that point with my wife and two kids. We moved to Las Vegas in 2003. Worked for the casinos a little bit, worked for Citibank, decided I really don't like working for other people. Right, traditional MSP owner, I think.
I'm not a good employee.
I'm really not a good employee. So I figured, okay, I need to go do my own thing again. Found some people to partner up with, and we ended up starting an MSP. It wasn't really called an MSP in 03-ish, or I think at that point it was 07 actually. So 4 years after I moved to Las Vegas, I started Agilitec IT with a partner and an operations manager. The operations manager lasted about 2 weeks. So it ended up just being my partner and myself for a little bit, right? He was a systems administrator, just both two technical people. Acquired clients fairly quickly, just hitting up different small businesses in the area, accounting firms, legal, medical, I'd say traditional professional services at that point. We were doing maintenance contracts at that time, maintenance contracts and block hour agreements. So there really wasn't flat rate back then. Maybe some people were doing it. We weren't, right? But that was an easy transition into traditional MSP as time went on. So that's how we started.
So, Allan, I got a question for you. You kind of glossed over, we went around to different businesses and, tried to grow. Like, that seems to be the real hard part for a growing MSP. What exactly were you guys doing that helped you grow?
I think it helped that I was an IT consultant previous, working and selling myself essentially. So I had a little bit of sales experience from that component, right?
Okay.
We actually ended up working with, I think our first hire was actually an admin. And we had that admin start to hit the ground and just do door knocking at that point. So we acquired some clients just from door knocking from that admin.
Cool.
Others were just business contacts I had made in Las Vegas in the 4 years I had lived in Las Vegas. And I wasn't afraid to go talk to them about, IT services at that time. I think our big push at that point was SPS. So we did a lot of small business server at that time. But I didn't have any problem walking in and acquiring clients from that component, and then grew from references and referrals because I think we did good work. So that helped.
That's cool. That's cool. And there's so many times we're talking to MSP owners and they they just can't do that. They don't have the ability to, right? It's not in their DNA, and it's just not
It's
done.
hard.
Phone,
It's
phones
hard.
weigh 200 pounds, and
Yeah.
every door is locked, whether it's open or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of IT people are introverts, so that's
Yes.
that's a challenge, right?
It's a challenge, yeah.
Yeah, right. And I
Goes
think
against their
I'm
nature.
naturally an introvert, but I've learned to be social in certain
Yes.
aspects, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Kind of
that's
have to,
great.
right?
Helps.
Well, yeah.
It does.
So, I think that gave us a little insight in how you came to, to be at Agilitec. Really what we always love to hear is the stories, right? What were some of the challenges MSP owners faced and things that really helped them transition and build their business? Agilitec is what it is today, but I'm sure it wasn't exactly as you just defined it there from the starting days. So talk a little bit about the journey since you started there and, where success and maybe some failure lied during that time.
Oh, failure. Yeah, never had any failures. Everything just was easy.
We're all on top of it, right?
You just start a company and it works. That's the way it goes.
Yeah. Well, and actually, honestly, for the first few years, I'd say that was probably accurate, right? It was easy. We were just doing IT work, right? That's how I looked at it. I wasn't running a business. It was just doing IT consulting, if you will. It wasn't very challenging. I'd say up until maybe a little over $1 million in revenue and some employees, right? Because at that time, being a technical owner, I still had a grasp on all of our clients, their environments, what they needed, right? I was serving as the account manager, senior engineer.
Yeah.
Sure, we hired some techs, but it was easy enough to keep things under control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could jump in. We didn't have to have a lot of processes, right? We didn't have SOPs. We just, winged it, right?
Yep.
It's all muscle and feel, right? Using certain terminology, right? And muscle and feel can get you up to $1 million just fine, maybe even to 2, right?
Yeah.
But I think it was that $1.5 million mark where the machine started to shake a bit, right? I think at that time, thinking back, maybe I think it was close to 10 employees, right? Where we didn't have enough processes to keep things running smoothly. And things started to get shaky, especially financially, right? I think the finances were our biggest hurdle, right? And where our first big, trouble, if you will, right? To where our financial models weren't really showing us when there was danger. And the faster the company grows, the bigger the company grows, the more danger there is, especially hiring employees. And our bookkeeping wasn't up to snuff, and we almost ran out of cash. Right? Run out of cash in a business, you're dead.
Cash is king.
Right? Can't make payroll, can't pay your bills, you're out of business, period.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was our first challenge and our first learning opportunity was as an owner, I had to get much better at knowing my finances, right?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing what my margins were, right? Aligning with, we ended up aligning with service leadership, right? Doing service leadership reporting. And that taught me everything I needed to know, right? I wasn't reinventing the wheel. I said, oh, here's a framework I can deal with, right? Being an IT person, I needed a system to work with. And that gave me the system. And then once we knew where our margins were with different models or different revenue lines and COGS, then we at least fixed that ship a little bit. So that was our first learning opportunity was financial. Right? Second after that was operational, right? Talking about SOPs and processes. After I'd say getting to that 10 employee mark, it's very important to have documented SOPs, processes, systems, ways of doing things so that things are repeatable in the same fashion that I would have done if I was the one doing the work. Right? Because I think that's the trick, right? Is a technical MSP owner, I could do a good job for our clients, but can the level 1 and level 2 techs do it that we hire? Right? How quickly can you onboard them and train them and ensure we're delivering a consistent product to our customers without them complaining and saying, no, I don't want this tech, I want you back. Right? Without that process and something to follow, that tech or the following techs are going to fall on their face. Right? So I think that was it, and learning from other peers, right? Meeting with other peers. We joined peer groups, right? And that helped the operational focus. So I think that was the third part of our journey: financial operations, working with consultants, joining a peer group then took us to the next level, because I was able to see what other best in class MSPs were doing. And that totally changed my mindset in terms of what's possible. And
So
gave us something
Allan,
to stretch.
if you were doing this over again and you were starting over again, knowing those three hurdles that you ran through there, what would be the first thing? Would you have done service leadership first? Would you have done peer group first? Like, what would be the thing that you would suggest to the newer person coming out and starting to go into first to try and alleviate some of those problems?
Yeah. Well, I think, while I would have loved to join a peer group at that time, there's a minimum threshold, right? So how do you get to that minimum threshold to begin with? So if I had to do it over again, I'd certainly arm myself with more business knowledge, right? If you're a technical owner coming into it as an IT consultant, or just an IT person, educate yourself as the owner, right? You have to at least know what you're talking about in terms of gross margins and your finances in order to be able to hire an appropriate bookkeeper, right? Because if you're operating blind, then you have to trust the financial people, and that may be a recipe for disaster. So
Yeah.
I would have accelerated my knowledge in there, and then worked with a consultant, like a C-level or service leadership, to help with operations and ensuring that you have good processes, because, why reinvent the wheel at this point? It's hard enough. I think that was the other big lesson, is we kept trying to do it ourselves, right? To save money, or because maybe we thought we knew everything. But we kept making mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And then those mistakes are expensive. So we figured, why don't we work with somebody that already knows how to do it, craft it, change it to our method, and then build upon that.
Yeah.
And that's been our methodology for the last 5-10 years at this point. If I'm entering to something new, I'm going to find somebody or a group that's done it and does it well, learn from them, customize it to our own needs, and then build upon that. That's a much better way to operate, I think, with everything.
And I think that, we say it all the time. I think those are some critical statements you put there, because we all do try to do it in the cheap early on, right?
Yeah.
And try to figure it out ourselves. But when you look about the amount of time that you spend trying to find the answers versus just going somewhere where you can get them, how much did it cost you on the business side of things, right? Or even just your sanity as you're going through this. So, kudos to you for kind of recognizing getting those processes into play first. And the second thing I took away from that too is, we hear it all the time. Acceleration seems to start once you get to that point where you can join a peer group. Once you get with those like-minded people who are supportive, and, I know some of the folks in your peer group, Allan, and it's amazing how just getting that posse around you, if you will, right, that you can be open and vulnerable with, changes how you can grow. So
oh yeah. I mean, I'm such a believer in peer groups. Is I'm in multiple, right? Not just an IT peer group, but I'm in a business group. I'm in a sales IT group. I mean, just surrounding yourself with other like-minded people. Yeah, like you said, it just accelerates your knowledge, and you just figure out things faster, and it drives you, right? There's a competitive aspect to it as well, right? Like it or not.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the low person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't want to be the bottom of the tunnel.
Yeah. You don't want to be.
You don't want to come to peer group when everybody else is talking success and say you step back this quarter, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little bit of that. Yeah, absolutely.
But you know what? Sometimes those steps back happen without us having any control on it. And you were sharing with us a little bit of a story prior to coming on today about, your experience in the pandemic. We've certainly, we actually started this show right at the beginning of the pandemic, probably as a way for Tim, Robb, and myself to have an excuse to talk to each other too.
Have an outlet.
Yeah.
And, when we got into it, one of the things that we did find is we heard from a lot of MSPs that really talked about this being a period of growth for them. I think if you're out at IT Nation, you even heard a couple of the speakers say, if you didn't make money during this period, you weren't paying attention. That said, though, you are out there in Sin City, and Sin City is known for hospitality and entertainment. And, obviously that was a sector that was legitimately hit hard. Maybe share with us a little bit about your story of the pandemic as somebody that catered, at least in part, to that vertical.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, Las Vegas is a tourist town, right? We don't have
Mm.
Yeah.
our economy is tourism. I think at the heat of the pandemic, we had close to 50% unemployment in the city, right? So just
Wow.
imagine that the whole city basically shut down, right? We're gone. Like it or not, one of our main verticals is multi-location fine dining, right? Restaurant groups. We had just signed on a huge group and just started onboarding them in October of 2019. So we were just a few months in. I'd say we lost about 20 to 30% of our revenue the minute the pandemic hit and restaurants had to shut down. There was no option.
Yeah.
There is no remote work in a restaurant.
Yeah.
Outside of DoorDash, I suppose there's that ended up coming up. But at that time, everybody was out of work. Restaurants were shut down. We were faced with losing 30% of our MRR. So our decision was, okay, do we start furloughing our employees or do we figure something out? Right? We only had a month or two at max, right, to try to pivot and figure something out. We started looking at other businesses that were still doing well during the pandemic because there were a few. We ended up identifying cannabis, right? Cannabis and liquor stores were still open in Las Vegas, and they actually shifted to delivery. Cannabis is recreationally legal in Nevada. And the way we looked at it is our restaurant packages, our MSP packages for restaurants were very similar to cannabis dispensaries. It's basically a distribution center, right? There's POS network, there's Wi-Fi, there's IoT devices. It was very similar. So we were able to pivot and started, going after dispensaries and grow facilities because grow facilities are just like manufacturing. And we do have some experience in manufacturing as well. So that actually, saved us quite a bit. We didn't have to furlough anybody. I mean, we were helped out with a PPP a bit, but we ended up not furloughing any employees. We recovered our revenue in 2020. We actually grew 40% last year. So yeah, we're, net stronger, better, faster than we were pre-pandemic. And now that things are open up again, our restaurant clients have come back. So our revenue then accelerated quite a bit. So that helped.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that came back as well.
That's awesome, right? Look the crisis dead in the eye.
Yeah.
And build balance, right? Now you've got a more diversified asset yourself in your company.
That's right.
Yeah, it's funny, we hear a lot about the cannabis market and, there's different schools of thought, mostly because the states have such differing laws on that. But really, you're seeing it become, common mainstream, and the needs are there, right? You kind of hit upon it. It's part distribution, part retail. It's into the mold. Just take the product out of the mix, and it's no different than many other businesses we do.
And I'll say this: there's much heavier compliance needs than restaurants. So MSPs are perfectly fit for that. I will say that the industry is immature right now. There's still some time, maturity needed from the cannabis facility owner's perspective. But I know that once they understand the need to hire technology professionals, especially to help them with compliance requirements, I think it's a perfect fit for the MSP industry.
I assume inventory control is really important there.
Well, the compliance, the hoops you have to jump through just to even get to a point where you open a store. I've heard it's exhausting, right? So when you're there, you better be set up right from a technology standpoint. The
state auditors are all over these guys all the time, right? Because the state knows that's where they're going to get their money, right? That goes to the rainy day fund or their school fund. It's all cash mostly, right? So there have to be a ton of controls in there and surveillance, especially. We ended up, adding surveillance as a product line in our systems, access control and surveillance, just to service that industry. But we found it very profitable for even MSPs. So
I'm sure
it's been great.
Sure.
And it's kind of like the wild, wild west for you guys, because there's not too many MSPs. And I talk to a lot of them. I don't have any MSPs that I know that are chasing after, that market at all. That's an untapped market. That's really smart.
And the way I look at it is what happens, if it goes nationally legal, right? If we can figure out that market while it's still just, I think, maybe 15 states is recreational, but we're getting close to half of the states in the US with medical. right? And it's on the books. So if in the next 5 years it goes nationally legal, then we're perfectly positioned to be, an industry expert in that field.
Wow.
It's going to be a
Smart.
a green rush, a gold rush, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. It's coming at some point. There's too many tax dollars for it not to.
That's it.
It's just the reality. Money talks.
Absolutely. That's right.
And I don't know if you guys keep up with any of Harry Brailsford's stuff. He runs that 420, newsletter each week.
420 MSP.
Yeah. And the industry, or the amount of companies that have actually already come into that industry from an application standpoint and security standpoint are amazing. So for the service providers, there's a lot of untapped partnership potential out there too. Those vendors are probably still at the early stage of making relationships with guys like you, Allan, and
absolutely. We set up Azure hosting for the line of business vendors because it's that immature model, right? They were still doing physical servers at all of these dispensaries. Why do you have physical equipment here? Why don't you move it to the cloud?
Well, when you said kind of your time coming into the industry back in '93, we kind of entered at the same time. And if you remember when software companies first came on the scene from a pure play IT standpoint, they were some of my best referral sources because they knew they needed infrastructure and they knew they needed security and they knew they didn't want to do it. Right. So
that's right.
Could be a huge opportunity out there as well as the green rush, as you put it, goes on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you kind of touched upon what normally would be our next question, but what is the future look like for you? And it sounds like future will be continuing to grow that part of your business and, further diversification based on lessons learned.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the future is continue to work with clients that are aligned with us, right? That we enjoy working with and that they enjoy working with us, right? Having a good partnership and growing from there, focusing on honestly, our biggest growth opportunity is co-managed, or what we call collaborative IT. I think that's our biggest growth, really, outside of all of the other industries. That's where we're focused.
That's really becoming the next wave, right? And and I think I've talked about it in other episodes we've had too. You see this real big need for more advisory services coming back. Again, we used to do a lot of consulting back before we became pure, managed service companies. How do we make money? Consulting on projects and how to get there, right? And then when we became MSPs, we really focused on the holy grail of recurring revenue and gave some of that away. But I'm seeing things coming full swing now as more and more companies are really looking at kind of specializing areas and really bringing that back. So kudos to you for getting into the co-managed piece of it too, because I think a lot of the CIOs out there will tell you, hey, I'm good at managing budgets and I'm good at managing people, but I don't necessarily have the right resource for everything. So those MSPs that tack on to advanced security services, automation, line of business application expertise and know-how will definitely be the next generation as,
I think it is
less and less asset break fix, continues to come into our lives.
Yeah, I see that as same. Yeah. These machines just don't break down as much, and the next generation already knows how to do the basics, right? Millennials and Gen Z, they don't need level 1 help desk.
Yeah,
they just don't.
Yeah, and those guys are now the leaders. They know what's going on, and they're looking for innovation. They're looking at how to do more with less. They're looking at how to automate, processes all over the place. And you see that's where the service provider community has opportunity, as long as you got your eyes open to it.
1,000,000%.
So anything else you'd like to add, Allan? Like, is there any great initiative that you've got going on this year that you're looking to accomplish before 2022 ends?
Great initiative. Just ensuring that we continue to build a good company. I provide work-life balance to our employees. That's huge for us, especially after the pandemic hit. We're just focused on that work-life balance, really, and not just grinding it out, not focused on 100% utilization or whatever that metric is for everybody. I think we just have too much burnout in this industry. So we're focused on methods of being able to alleviate that. Right. And we touched on that a little bit, and I don't know if we have enough time, but yeah, we pull in resources from offshore and globally in order to be able to offset that requirement for our not internal employees, but our local Las Vegas employees. Right. So everybody's not so, stretched thin. We're able to leverage offshore resources to be able to kind of level that playing field and have more employees. So that's what we do.
Yeah, that's great. We've seen an uptick in that especially since COVID hit. We have multiple clients now that they have a team very similar to what we were talking about before we did this. Maybe not as many, but they have 4 or 5 resources in the Philippines or, just offshore somewhere. And it's created a whole balance for them as well. It's evened out the playing field a little bit. So you're not just, you're not working 24 hours a day, and you don't have to always worry about those fires that might happen on the weekends or after hours, right? Yeah. So it's interesting to see how people have gravitated towards, having these full teams somewhere else, but still making it work.
Yeah. Well, I think the pandemic helped that, right? With remote work, Teams, Zoom. I mean, it doesn't really matter where your employees are at this point.
Why does it matter?
Why not just hire the best?
Yeah,
they are,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And I tell you, more and more people are heading to the Philippines for that too, because there's just such a commonality with language capabilities. And there's just a customer service kind of nature to the folks out there. I personally deal with offshore, both in the Philippines and in India, and there's just different skill sets in those 2 worlds, right? No shock that my developers are in India, and
sure,
the folks that are helping with service tend to be in the Philippines.
Absolutely. I mean, enterprise has been doing it for a decade plus, right? It's time for the small business to be able to do the same and provide that flexibility, right? Not just looking at it from a cost saving standpoint, but again, my main focus is work-life balance, right? Being able to hire admins for everybody, being able to hire project managers to offload that from the techs, right? I mean, the new project manager we hired, she's a PhD, right? I mean, very highly credentialed. We're not hiring bottom of the barrel people, offshore. These are highly talented people that would do great if they were in the US, right? Just happen to live in the Philippines. So why not leverage it?
I love waking up to seeing work that was accomplished while I was sleeping. That's my favorite.
That's the best part. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, being in Vegas, we're 24/7. So we have to answer the phone 24/7. So that made sense for us.
Yeah.
It's not right for everybody, but it's great for us. Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add before we break today, Allan?
Oh, that's it. Just thanks for inviting me on the show. And, pleasure speaking with you guys. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Allan, we really appreciate you joining us today. For anyone that is looking to get in touch with Allan, we will be including his LinkedIn profile with the podcast. Also, this episode will be up on mspbusinessschool.com and anywhere that you get your podcast, to include YouTube. So please like and subscribe there. As always, fellas, we really appreciate it. This was a good one today, and I wish you guys all the best.
Thanks for joining us, Allan.
Coming up.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.